Okay, so welcome back. Now, in the first video in the series, we talked about a scientific engineering programming language called FORTRAN. And we talked about the basics of how to set it up on your computer. We were using a Linux Mint machine, but you can do it on Windows. And we showed how to set it up. We showed some basic functionality. We talked about subroutines and functions. We talked about reading and writing to a CSV file. And we also talked about how to simply set up to plot data from a CSV file. And one of the things we talked about in the first video was the apparent lack of functionality and documentation for FORTRAN that shows how to do some what seemed to be some very basic and simple functions. And we specifically were talking about, for example, being able to access, read and write over a USB port on your computer. And if you look around the internet, there's virtually no information on USB access. And so what we're going to do in this video is we are going to look at a way that I developed that is fairly simple, where we can access data from an Arduino over a USB port. And we're going to grab the data from the Arduino over the USB port, and we're going to put that data into a CSV file. And honestly, it took a lot of searching around the internet, and there was absolutely nothing there to explain how to do it. So I went and figured out a way to do it, and it's really not too bad. So here I've got the code, the FORTRAN code that's going to do that. And over here, you can see I've got my Arduino Nano. So what I'll do is I will run this code, this FORTRAN code, on my laptop. And I've already downloaded a sketch onto the Nano. And let me run this and I'll show you what this is going to do. So it says, okay, I'm opening the Arduino connection and I'm returning the status. So if it's a status of 0, that means it was successful in opening the Arduino connection. And then it says to the user, press enter to read from the Arduino. And what it's going to do when I press enter is it's going to read data every second from the Arduino. And the Arduino is going to generate basically sine wave data. It's going to calculate the sine of a number and feed that to the computer. So I'll hit enter, and you can see reading number 1 is a value from the Arduino 0. Number 2, it goes to 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and it's going to go, these are going to be basically sine values, and you can see it gets up to 1, and then it's starting to go down again. So each reading is a different value of a sine wave. So you can also see that the Nano is every second, it is transmitting, that's the blinking light, it's transmitting this sine data over the USB connection, and it's coming into the computer over here, and we're reading it in the FORTRAN code. So what we'll do is we'll first look at the sketch we used for the Nano to send out data every second, and then we'll look at the FORTRAN code on the Linux laptop to see how we can grab that data and print it out and put it into a CSV. Okay, now when you start out with FORTRAN and we're on Linux, I'm on Linux Mint, the first thing you need to figure out is how you're going to address the USB port. In C# and Windows, it's fairly straightforward. You call it COM2 or whatever it is. It's a COM port, and you address it, and you're all set to go. With FORTRAN and Linux, it's not that simple. It's a bit confusing. And the problem is, if you look down here, this is our FORTRAN code that we're going to be writing. To open the USB so you can communicate, you use an open command, and the port is referred to as a file, okay? It's not a port, it's a file. So you need to find the file name corresponding to that port. And that's the biggest challenge right off, to figure out what's the correct file name so that we'll open the port. So not a lot of information on the net, virtually nothing on the internet that I could find about how to do that. So what I did is I went to the Arduino IDE that I had loaded onto my Linux machine. And here's my Arduino, and here's the code we're going to send down to the Arduino. And I figured the Arduino is also going to have to refer to that port to do its sending. So maybe I can get that information here in the Arduino IDE. So what I did is I've got the IDE and I go up to the Tools menu. And of course you have to set the board to, in this case, an Arduino Nano. So you select that. And down here there is a port. And you select the port. And it tells you what the port is on this FORTRAN Linux machine. And it is /dev /ttyacm0. Okay, that is how the Arduino is referring to the port. So basically there is a folder called /dev, and there's information in that folder about this port. So what you need to do is you need to copy that port name and use it in the FORTRAN code, okay? So that's the first step you need to do. Figure out what your port name is by firing up your Arduino IDE, all right? So once you got that, write it down, and then we'll use that later. Now, I've got my Arduino Nano plugged into this laptop in the USB, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this sketch, and basically all the sketch is going to do is it's going to, first of all, wait for the FORTRAN, the laptop on the FORTRAN, to send it a command. And once it receives that command, it will be a string. Once it receives that command over the USB, it will start generating data and sending it every second over the serial USB port to the laptop. Okay? So here is the code we're going to generate. Again, very simple. I'm declaring two variables. One is a double, and I'm going to call that B, and I'm starting out at 0.0. This B is going to be the value that we're going to calculate the sign of. So we're going to take the sign of B and send that every second on the USB to the laptop so the FORTRAN can receive it. Okay, so B is a double. Receive value is the string I'm going to initially receive from the laptop that says, okay, start sending me data. Of course, the first thing, serial.begin. We're going to use 9600 baud, doesn't really matter. And the loop is very straightforward. This is just going to wait. If there is data available at the serial port, in other words, something was sent from the FORTRAN saying, okay, start sending me data, and we saw that when we started up. If there is data available, then receive that value, take that string, read that string from the serial port, and assign it to receive value, okay? Now, what I'm doing here, I'm not using that receive value for anything. You can use it if you want. You can say, okay, if I've got a yes, do this. If I've got a no, do this. But I'm just receiving the data, and once I receive any character at all, I'm going to start generating data and sending it back to the computer, okay? So I read the string, and I'm just doing an infinite loop, a while true. So this is going to be an infinite loop, and all I'm doing is I am printing a line to the serial port to the USB, and I'm calculating the sign of that B value and then incrementing B by 0.1, waiting for 1 second or 1,000 milliseconds and doing it again. So I'm going to just keep generating a sine wave, sine of B, and I'm incrementing B by 0.1. And that's all I'm doing. That's the whole sketch for the Nano. Again, you can tweak this to make it start and stop when you want or whatever, but this is just going to continually generate, every second it's going to generate data, okay? So, now, we're done with that. And I've uploaded that to the Nano. So now what am I going to do for the FORTRAN? So here is the FORTRAN. I've just got one file. I call it main.f90. And this is it right here. Okay, one program. It's got a do loop, and that's about it. So program, I'm calling it Arduino read, and I've got an end program down here. And I've got the standard implicit none because I want to specify each variable. And I've got 3 variables here. I've got a character, a 10-digit character called readVal. And readVal is basically the sign value character that I received from the Nano over the USB. Okay? And I've got 2 integers. One is iOS and one is I. Now, iOS is basically an integer status value. When we open up the port to the Arduino, it's going to return a status integer. And if the iOS is 0, that means it opened it up and no problem. If it's not, then we've got a problem. I is just the incrementer that we're going to use down here for our do loop. What we're going to do is we're going to generate 100 sign values, increment each one. We're going to read 100 sign values from the Arduino, and that's it. So that's the incrementer, that I. Now, opening the Arduino connection. It's this set of code right here, and really it's fairly straightforward once you figure it out. So I'm first printing to the console this asterisk comma, and I'm saying opening Arduino connection, which you saw originally. Now this is the magical line that opens the connection to the Arduino. And you can see it's an open command, and I've got a 10 here. And that 10 is a reference number that I'm going to be able to refer to this connection. It's kind of like referring to a COM8 on your Windows C# program, right? But I'm going to refer to it as just 10, unit 10. That's going to be my open connection to the Arduino. Now, as I mentioned before, with FORTRAN, you refer to a COM port as a file, and you give it a file name. And we saw in the beginning that you get this /dev/ttyacm0 in my case. You're going to have to look on the Nano ID or the Arduino IDE for the one for you, but this is the name of the USB port. And IOStat just says, okay, when you open this, if you get a status message back, we are naming it iOS. So send your status message or your status integer to iOS. And then we can look at iOS in our code and see if it's good or bad. So really that's it. I've opened the port, and this is the port. I've assigned it a unit number of 10, and I'm going to grab this iOS to see if it opens successfully. So then I am writing to the console the iOS number using this format. So I'm using line 12 format, and it's going to say open connection with status, whatever this iOS was. And I gave it an integer 3. And hopefully, again, this will be a 0 like we saw before. So now I've got the port opened, and I've got the status message. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a CSV file in this same group of files in my workspace, and I'm going to call it arduino.csv. So I'm opening, and I'm going to call it unit 15. I'm already using unit 10, so I'm just going to choose unit 15. And that's my arduino.csv. So it just opens this for writing. All right, so now I can write my data to the CSV. Now I'm going to ask the user to press enter. I'm all set, ready to go. I've opened my CSV. I've opened my port. Now I'm going to tell the user, okay, if you want to gather data from the Arduino, press enter. So I'm just reading, and I'm not doing anything with that enter. I'm just immediately writing to unit 10, which is this USB port. I'm writing, and I'm going to send out a G character. Now, it doesn't matter what you send. You could use G for go, so you could modify your Arduino sketch to say, if I get a G, then do this. And we showed that in the previous videos on the Arduino. But I'm just writing a G. I'm not going to use it on the Arduino. It's just a character. And once the Arduino gets a character, whatever it is, it's going to start sending. Now I've got the rest of my code is just this do loop. And it's going from 1 to 100. It's going to read 100 values from the Arduino. Okay? And recall that the Arduino is sending out every second. It's going to send out a sign value. And I'm going to read 100 values, but I don't have any delays here, okay? So what we're going to see is when I do a read, this FORTRAN read, unit 10, again, this is the USB unit, it's going to wait until I get data from the Arduino. So it's really nice. It's going to sit there and wait for the Arduino every second, and it's going to read the value as it comes in from the Arduino. Okay, again, read value is a 10-digit character. All right, so I've read in read value, and then I'm going to print the incrementer, and the read value to the terminal so the user can see what I've got. So I'm printing using the line 20 format, the incrementer and the actual string read value. And I'm using this format. I'm reading number whatever, and that's that reading. I've got 100 readings, and each reading is going to increment. So I'm using an integer 3 for the reading number, and this is going to be from 0 to 100. And then the value from the Arduino is this read value, which is a ASCII 10 character. All right? So that's all I'm doing. I'm just getting a value and sending it to the terminal. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the same thing, the incrementer, and the read value to the CSV file. And that's very simple. I am using writing to 15, and remember we opened unit 15 as the Arduino.csv, so I'm writing to that 15 using the format statement at line 25. And I'm sending I and read value, and I'm using the format of I3, and since it's a CSV, I'm inserting a comma in the file, and then doing the A10, the read value character. Okay? So I'm reading to the screen, and then I'm printing a CSV to the CSV file. So I'm doing that 100 times. And as we will see, or as we saw before, it waits for this sits there and waits for something to come in on the USB port, and then it will write it to the screen and print. And then when I'm done with those 100 values, I'm going to print to the terminal, okay, I wrote values to the Arduino CSV, and then I'm going to close the USB port, and I'm going to close the CSV file, and that's it. And I'm done, okay? So let's just run this again, and you can see what it does. Okay, so I'm going to plug in my Arduino Nano, so it's ready to go. And here I'm going to hit build and run and see what we get. So I've opened the connection, status 0, press enter to read from Arduino. So everything's all set, and it says press enter and we can read. So I press enter, and I'm reading value 1, and it's 0. Number 2 is 0.1, and you can see it's taking that sign value and sending it back to the FORTRAN program. And it's going to do this 100 times, and when it gets down to 100, it's going to close everything, and that's it. Okay, so here we are coming up on reading number 97, 98, 99, 100, and you can see it wrote values to the Arduino, and it's done. Okay, so it's done all its values, and we hit enter. And now what we can do is we can look in our folder and see what we got. You can see we've got an Arduino.csv file, and I'll right click and I will open with say the text editor, and you can see here we've got our values. Reading number 1 is 0, number 2 is 0.1, and so on. It goes down and it's got, we go down to the bottom and you've got your 100 values. And we showed before how we can take that CSV and plot it, and pretty easy in C# or in FORTRAN with GNUPLOT. So anyway, that's the basics of how you can, at least one way of accessing the USB, and in particular an Arduino. And it's fairly straightforward, but again, there's not a lot of documentation and information. You kind of got to work it out yourself. So anyway, I hope that helps. Take care and have a really good day. Thanks.